I get to the right page. Sorry. Maybe not. It's all plugged in, and it's, well, I don't know. Okay, I guess not.
Okay, so no production values again. This is like, let's flip a coin. Do we get them or not? Hey, anyway, whatever. Welcome, NASCAR. I can get to the coughs in there. Welcome, NASCAR fans, to this week's edition of the live NASCAR Hangout on PitRow. I'm Charlie Turner, the guy that was babbling and scrambling there trying to get the sounders to work with Steve Rockwitz. Hey, Steve-O, how you doing?
Hey, hold on 1 second.
It's time to fasten your seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on PitRow. On PitRow is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go on PitRow, boys.
Thank you.
Well, there we go.
How about that?
Nothing to it. So anyway, he was Steve Rockwitz. He did actually get it right, and Dan Beaver's down there with no culpability at all in Texas, just sitting back watching us scramble and fumble. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. This is the most fun I've had all day.
Yeah, well, we're a funny group. So anyway, excuse me. Welcome to On PitRow again this week. We just finished up the first round of the 2014 Chase to the Cup. What was that? Was that the Challenger round?
It was the Challenger round.
The Challenger round is over, and we move on to the Contender round now. And
wasn't that the I think I am round, and now we're in the I hope I am round? Or
yeah, something like that. So Steve, what do you think? Was it did the drama carry over to the race? Was there? I mean, there was certainly drama among the drivers looking at the interviews after the race about the guys that didn't make it. But
it was touch and go there with only one run, and up until the 9th inning, I was really pretty Oh wait. That was something else, wasn't it?
There was, yes.
You know, I got to say that I almost felt like Dan Beaver here, you know, these last couple of weeks, and NASCAR really kind of got things right. There was a lot more interest in this race than there had been in the last couple third races of the Chase, if you will, and it has to be only because you didn't know exactly how it was going to play out, who was going to get in. It was the most god-awful weekend. Jeff Gordon winning on Sunday, Kyle Busch winning another who gives a damn nationwide race on Saturday. As far as I'm concerned, I think they took the weekend off, but yeah, it was pretty interesting. I kind of liked it.
Then a 12-year-old won the truck race.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows? Who knows?
So what do you think,
I liked it.
Dan, how about you? What's your opinion? How are we doing? How's NASCAR doing so far with their? Here's my comment about trying to watch the Chase, because I was doing the same thing Steve was. He and I are both admitted big Detroit sports fans, so I'm flipping back and forth between the Lions game, the Tigers' potential playoff game, and the NASCAR race, at least at the first half of the NASCAR race. And to try to follow what's going on in this Chase thing without sound is impossible.
Yep. Well, to try to follow a race at Dover without sound is pretty much impossible. You never know what pit stop strategy people are on. It's just it's difficult to watch a race there regardless. Unless but wait a minute, you're saying that there.
We're going to ask you to re-say what you just got done saying, Dan, in a minute, because it looked like we had a little bit of a bandwidth problem there. Steve, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah. Dan got lost in cyberspace there for a minute.
Yeah, we got a little bit broken up. We'll get back to that. We just lost about the last minute of your comment there, Dan. So, yeah, when I watched, the race was kind of boring. You know, Harvick dominated, then he didn't, then Gordon dominated, and that was kind of the way it ended. All the drama was back in those other places, and you're trying to watch that crawl at the bottom and the crawl at the top about who's in, who's out. and whenever they would pit, it would just get totally scrambled. I had no idea who was going to make this thing until probably the last 10 laps of the race.
Well, Casey Kane, I think, after the race said he didn't know he'd made it until the race was over. And someone finally told him. He was trying to keep abreast of it while that was going on, and he couldn't keep up inside the car. So, he could feel your pain. I'm sure you could feel his. So,
if you want to re-say what you said before, your audio's fine now for some reason. I don't know. We must have had a cloud go over you down in Texas.
Yeah, I'm betting you didn't hear me because I was saying, wait a minute. There's Detroit has professional sports teams. I thought it was.
Well, maybe we blocked you out on purpose.
Yeah. Somehow you got an auto filter that got me out of there.
That's okay. We're used to that up here.
As far as I know, it's only Michigan International Speedway. So, and my daughter's a Red Wings fan, so I know about those guys.
Well, she has some taste at least.
Right. But Dover's a lot like that. Dover's a hard race to follow without the sound on anyway, because there are a lot of varying pit stop strategies, and I've had to watch that race in a bar from time to time for one reason or another. Back in Minneapolis, he used to always have brownouts around the June race, and so I'd have to go find some place to watch it, and it's hard to watch without the sound on.
Yeah, this was what was most comparable to me to this year has been trying to watch the qualifying without sound, because you can't watch that qualifying deal either without sound. You can look at the scroll at the bottom and all that stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I think it looks to me like NASCAR really got this figured out. Now, whether it carries through as we get fewer and fewer cars involved in the chase, I don't know. But the first round and the races leading into the chase, certainly there was a lot of excitement.
I think the only thing that could have been better is if there would have been a little more drama as to who wasn't going to make it, because I think we pretty much had it all figured out last week, most likely who was not going to progress to the next round, and maybe Kurt Busch was the only one that might have been a little bit of a surprise, but I think pretty much we figured out the other three, and it would have been nice if that would have been a little more, up in the air, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that he did.
Drama in there. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm not surprised that he didn't, but I wouldn't have been surprised if A.J. Allmendinger did advance, though, after that strong run at New Hampshire. Dover has been a track where he has run relatively decent in the past, and he had a little bit of a cushion, so I'm a little surprised that he fell out. I thought they would do just well enough to be in, and then Kurt Busch would be the one that got knocked out. I didn't think... I think I had Ryan Newman as my other driver that I thought would fall out. And Kane would make it. So the difference between Newman and Allmendinger was a bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, and it was a surprise and a huge disappointment to Allmendinger because he was crushed after the race. I mean, he was as down as anybody I've ever seen, I think.
Now the other thing.
No, go.
No, I was going to say the next thing is as we progress to the next round, is there going to be any surprises in this group? And we talked about it before. Is Darrell Waltrip said that these guys kind of eliminate themselves, but seeing as they start all over at square one, pretty much. Now, do you think there's going to be? Isn't this the round where maybe there'll be the bigger surprises?
Well, I'm going to throw this out. I threw this out as a talking point on our Facebook page, or on PitRow Facebook page today, to try and spur some comments for our Shell gift card giveaway, and it was. Who are the four drivers that will not make it to the next round? What four are going to fall out in the contender round? And I didn't put the four in. I didn't put my own opinion in there, but I did throw a comment in there that I think one of these four drivers will get eliminated at Talladega. Keselowski, Logano, Johnson, or Gordon. I think to me those are my favorites for the final at this point. If I had to pick four to be favorites, and they were the top four in this particular race, which had nothing to do with it. But those are my favorites to make it. But I think somebody, one of those four guys, who's an obvious contender for the championship, is going to get eliminated at Talladega, and that's going to cause some discussion about whether to take that plate race out of here. What do you think?
I agree that Talladega is going to be the kicker, and it means that we don't have any idea what this round is going to be like. You can't expect it to be like the last one. We talked a little bit earlier. there has been an arc to this chase with a beginning, a middle, and an end. With Talladega looming out there, that arc is much smaller. There's a beginning and an end at Kansas and Charlotte, and if you don't get enough points in those two races to give yourself a little bit of a cushion going into Talladega, it's entirely a coin flip as to whether or not you're going to make it. You got to kind of handicap by the numbers, so I wouldn't disagree with you. I think you might be right. One of those major guys is going to get knocked out. But I think the one that's going to get knocked out, who's a major guy, is Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he's not going to advance through Talladega unless he happens to win the race.
That would be a huge hit for NASCAR. And we're joined, by the way, Beth Ann Heisler is with us. Hey, Beth Ann, how you doing?
Okay.
All right. So you heard what we've been talking about a little bit. What do you think? If one of those top four guys gets eliminated at Talladega because of a big wreck, does that make this chase fluky to you, or is it just part of the deal?
That's just part of the deal. It doesn't bother me at all. But
wreck them all, right? Wreck them all.
Yeah, that's right. Have a bunch of newbies in there.
Steve, what do you think?
I just think that it's back to the same thing. You're going to looking at guys to win races, and they're going to be the ones who are going to be in there. And who's been able to win races all year? You've had a couple of guys. Jeff Gordon's been able to win races. Keselowski's been able to win races because they step up their game again from this point. You know, they won a race in the last go round. Now can they win a race here and make themselves exempt from having to mess around with points? And I think that's who you have to look at here, guys who've been able to win races all year long. And it's been three guys. It's been pretty much Logano, Keselowski, and Jeff Gordon. So those three are the ones that you have to look at as pretty much we're in, and then from there it's a crapshoot, I think, with Talladega.
Well, even if only two of those guys can win the next two races, so only two of them can exempt themselves from Talladega disaster, right? And I think that probably those guys would be the favorites in the next two races, won't they, Dan? Certainly at Kansas, you got to pick one of those drivers, I would think.
Well, I think you got to throw Logano in there too, and I think that if you sweep the top five in the next two races, you've got a decent chance, like Harvick did going into Dover. You could have, so long as you're not knocked out, the big one that crash doesn't happen at the very beginning, and you don't get knocked out in the 40s. So I think we're probably looking at three drivers that are going to feel relatively good going into Talladega, if someone manages to get top fives but not win. And Logano's the only driver who has swept the top five in the first three chase races. Busch and Keselowski have also swept the top 10, but Logano's been the class of the field at the front of in that top five. So I would predict Keselowski, Gordon, Logano will win one of the next races, and that Logano will finish top five in the next two races. Those guys, I'm hoping, are kind of safe, and then after that, honestly, I don't care. But to answer one of the questions that you asked, Beth, I think if Talladega has that kind of impact on the lineup going into the eliminator round, it validates the chase. Maybe not entirely, but more than 50% invalidates the chase by having that one coin flip race in what we're calling a playoff.
You know, I know. Here's one thing I do know. If this hangout's going viral because Beth's had a cat walking behind her head the whole time we've been doing this show. And anytime you put an animal and anything on social media, we're going viral. So keep the cat coming there, Beth. This would be a good time for us to segue into our Shell gift card giveaway, because I did put up on the Facebook page today something to spur some comments, and it was, who do you think are the four drivers who will not make it to the next round? We're not talking about just one who won't make it, but what four drivers will not survive the contender round, and that's what we put out there. And tell them what they win, Steve.
Well, if you submit that Shell Saver Card comment of the day, you could take home a $50 Shell gift card. And, of course, anytime Joey Logano, driver that 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Fusion, wins a 2014 points race, including in the chase versions, Shell Saver Card holders save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasoline or Shell diesel just by using their Shell Saver Card on the Wednesday after the race. Offer valid up to 25 gallons. You can go to shell.us/Wednesday for all the details, as they say.
All right, so who do you think? I mean, if you got to pick four that aren't going to make it the next round, I mean, it wouldn't be fair for us to not make our picks. We're asking other people. What do you think?
Carl Edwards is one.
One, okay.
I think Clint Boyer.
Clint Boyer's not in it. Clint Boyer's not in it.
He definitely won't then,
You're
will he?
safe. You're safe with that.
I am safe with that. See, there you go. I wasn't able to get notes. I have no notes in front of me.
That's why I asked somebody else, so I didn't have to pick the first four on my own.
See? Oh, well, there you go. See, we should always let Dan answer this first. And then just agree with him.
I'm going with Cole Witt, Justin Allgaier, Casey Mears, and well, I've already said I don't think Earnhardt's going to make it through. I think he's going to do badly enough on the next two similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks that Talladega's going to kick him out. Then Denny Hamlin, Ryan Newman, Carl Edwards. And just as an FYI, if you want to know why, go to Roto World, and there's an article there called Chasing Kansas that will give you the reason that I think those four guys will get dropped out.
Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, go to rotoworld.com, read Dan's article there about that. That's really good if you want to help yourself handicap this thing. I've got kind of the same ones as most of you. I think most of us are going to agree on like 3 out of the 4, probably. But I don't think that. I think this is where the Gibbs cars go away. I think all 3 of them are going to be gone. And if I got to pick the 4th one that's not going to make it, I probably got to go with Carl Edwards. So I got Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch out.
So you got all 4.
Yep.
You got all 4 Gibbs cars.
Yeah, all 4 Gibbs cars are out. The Gibbs team is out.
See,
all 4 Gibbs drivers.
Yeah, see, Ryan Newman and Clint Boyer are the same person to me, so that's why I got that. See.
Beth, who you got? What 4 do you think are not going to make it?
Denny Hamlin, Carl Edwards, Ryan Newman. Geez, I don't know. Up for grabs in the 4th one could be several people.
Whoever wrecks at Talladega.
Right. Whoever wrecks at Talladega.
Whoever wrecks first at Talladega.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we think. So tell us what you think. Put them up on the Facebook page or comment on our blog at onpitrow.com, benchracing.onpitrow.com, or our YouTube page for this video. And one with the most, interesting comment will win a $50 Shell gift card this week. So thanks for playing with us. I think the other story that we need to get to before we start talking about fantasy at Kansas is Tony Stewart's, the big announcement about Tony Stewart, which happened after our show last week. The case went to grand jury. Didn't take very long for the grand jury to make a call, which I kind of anticipate was going to be what happened there. And it's been decided that there will be no criminal charges filed against Stewart in the Kevin Ward death, which is, I think, good news for everybody. What do you all think?
I think the reason that it went to grand jury was because the sheriff's department, the local group who were investigating it, did not want to be the ones to come out with the facts that that Ward had marijuana in the system, whether or not that had anything to do with what was going on. I think that's the reason it went to the grand jury, just basically because the locals were a little afraid to bring that information out. Tony Stewart said yesterday in his press conference it didn't matter to him whether he did or did not, and I think it's a little bit of a moot point whether he had marijuana in the system. I think it's a tragedy, and Tony Stewart was not to blame for it.
Dan, you said that you watched the press conference and it affected you.
Yeah, the thing that I took away from it was just an immense sadness. I've never seen Tony Stewart like that, either in person or on TV, and it's just such a huge impact on him. I'm not particularly a Tony Stewart fan. I'm not really particularly a fan of any driver, but I felt more for Stewart in that hour of watching that than I ever have in my life.
Yeah, he definitely was not the same Tony Stewart that we had heard before. Like you say, Dan, whether you're a Tony Stewart fan or you're not a Tony Stewart fan, you learn to have a certain level of Tony Stewart enthusiasm, whether it be biting sarcasm or just the way he was talking during any kind of discussions, and it definitely was not there. I didn't get to see it. I was listening to it on Sirius XM, and it certainly came across in that as well, just an overall lethargism in his voice.
And no light to his eyes, looking down a lot. The fact that I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, I understand what Tony Stewart has against the media some of the time because they keep repeating the questions, and as they're forced to ask that second, third, fourth question, they become pretty inane. And he couldn't even rise to. He just answered those questions with the same emotion that he answered everything. So I know I kind of felt bad that he couldn't lash out at the.
Yeah, the real Tony Stewart would have pretty much eaten them all alive.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you think. I know you're a Tony fan in a way.
Well, he definitely is not the same Tony Stewart, because I see him at the track, and especially like before the during the driver intros and during practice and stuff, and he was always out there, having jokes with other drivers, and he was just always working the track,
Well,
like
you've told me in the past he's kind of flirtatious and stuff.
He's flirtatious, and he's fun with the other drivers, and he'll go by and pat one on the back and make a comment and all that stuff. The last couple of times I've seen him, since this has happened, he's not like that at all. He's just quiet. He kind of is off to himself. He's not like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, hopefully this story will, with 7 races to go in the season, we'll be able to get it behind us as fans and as NASCAR followers. I don't know if it's ever going to leave Tony. I kind of doubt it. I think it's going to linger. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he can slough it off at some point.
Well, time heals. At some point, you stop remembering things daily, and you start to, or many times a day, and it stops being that thing that's front of mind. But I don't think he will either. And the fact that he said in the press conference that he might not ever race a sprint car again, I think, is about the most impactful, telling statement that he made. If
Absolutely.
that has been taken out of his life, given his passion for it, then that underscores just how much of an impact this has had on him.
I think the one thing, Dan, that he said in regards to that was after he broke his leg a year ago, all he thought about while he was recuperating was thinking about getting back in that sprint car, where he was going to go race and how many races he was going to have. And that was number one in his mind, was getting back in that sprint car to have some fun. And like you said, he has no interest at this point in ever getting back into a sprint car. Now that may change, but talk about a total 180-degree switch in theories, and that's exactly, I think that's a telling part.
Yeah, and and he can't really enjoy Donnie Schatz' success, and Schatz pretty much has the World of Outlaws title wrapped up, and 20+ wins, I think, and it's just you hope that he can at least appreciate that before the end of the season.
Yep. Well, hopefully at least we won't have to talk about this story for a while, and maybe we'll revisit it at the end of the year or something, as I'm sure it's one of the big stories of 2014 for the year. But let's get on to, we're going to Kansas next week, and a similarly configured 1.5-mile track. As I get through the season, I'm getting better at saying that, by the way. Sort of flattish a little bit, not as high a banked as some, but certainly a fast track. Used to be pretty much owned by Greg Biffle for a little while, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Dan, what are we looking for fantasy tips for Kansas this week?
But I think the chase is going to have an impact on this, the chase format. Drivers, those top 12 in points, have to get off to a good start here. And I think we're going to see the same thing happen here that we saw happen at Chicagoland. They're going to have everything right that they can control. And the things that are going to impact them are going to be the things that they can't control. So we're looking at another domination of the top 10 by those 12 drivers, and we're looking at drivers that run well on the unrestricted intermediate speedways, the similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks, to dominate again. You didn't get to this point with cookie cutter tracks, mile-and-a-half tracks being 25% of the more than 25% of the schedule, and add the 2 mile tracks of Michigan and Auto Club, and you've got it as more than 33% of the schedule. You didn't get to the chase without running well on those course types. So that's who's going to be at the front of the pack. You can look at either Kansas standing by itself, or you can look at a driver's record on the mile-and-a-half tracks and make your handicaps that way. If you look at Kansas by itself, Jimmy Johnson should be the no-brainer. He comes in with, let's see, what is the streak? With an 11 race top 10 streak, but he hasn't looked the same. I've made the comment that I thought he needed to challenge to win at Dover in order for us to really trust that he's going to run the table or dominate like he has in the playoffs in the past. And he didn't challenge to win. He got a third place finish, but he never led a lap. He was never a threat to lead. He was never a threat to win. That said, he's good for a top 10, so he's a low risk, potentially high reward driver, and I think he deserves to be in the group, especially on the in the Yahoo game in Group A. At this point, you probably, or you might have exhausted Jeff Gordon and Kevin Harvick, who've been the class of the field up to now. So you got to look a little further afield for drivers that to put in Yahoo's Group A. Then Matt Kenseth, I could think, is the other. He's a nice, safe pick. I think he's the only driver who swept the top 10 on the similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks. He has almost as long a streak at Kansas as Jimmy Johnson, with the exception that he finished 11th in this race last year. But that's offset by back-to-back victories in 2012 and 2013. So another good pick. Then you look at who's been at the front of the pack for the last 2 races, and that's Gordon and Harvick. Gordon was third in this race last year. Harvick won it. Gordon won this race. Harvick finished second. So those are your 4 drivers that it's going to come down to in Group A. If you want a dark horse, Casey Kane's third place finish and a sweep of, I believe, the top 15 on cookie cutter tracks this year makes him a good pick. Now that he's advanced to this round and that pressure is off his shoulder, I think he is going to get through the next 2 races really strong, and that's one reason that I think he's going to be one of those drivers that advances beyond Talladega, because he's got these 2 races that are going to give him some sort of a points cushion. You go down to Group B, and obviously you're still talking about Brad Keselowski and Joe Logano. Keselowski and Gordon have finished either first or second in 3 of the last 4 races. I think they had Keselowski had a second place finish a few races before that. So, that's where he's going to be again. He's going to be in the top 5, and Logano's going to be in the top 5 probably. If you're down to your last allocations, then that's what you're going to want to. That's where you're going to want to put your emphasis. Gets a little more complicated going below that because we've got you have to decide whether or not what's most important to you is the consistency or raw power. Raw power, you put Jamie McMurray on the roster in all likelihood. Had a good race up until last week. Of course, I started him at Dover, and that's the reason that he ran so badly there. But up until then, doing pretty darn good. Chip Ganassi guys, I think, are still the class of the field, especially on these unrestricted intermediate speedways, because they've got the Hendrick Motorsports power under their hood as well. If you're looking for consistency, then you're looking at Carl Edwards or Ryan Newman. So those are the drivers that belong on the roster. A Martin Truex Jr. is a nice long shot. A Paul Menard's a nice long shot. They've been relatively consistent on this track type. Truex might be the better dark horse this week because of his strong finish last week and his strong finish in the 3 chase races so far. I believe he's swept the top 15 in the last 3 races. Last year, Barney Visor's number 78 had a streak of 5 top 6 finishes with Kurt Busch behind the wheel on similarly configured non-F tracks. So the team knows how to set up the car. Truex is finally learning how to get the feel for the car, or how to effectively communicate that back to the team. And they could be that team that really surprises us in this race and gets a top 10 finish. Perhaps even challenge for a top 5. But if you're going to put them on the roster, you have to be prepared to start someone else if they struggle in practice. You might want to leave either Keselowski or Logano off of your roster, although I've been saying you want them on there every week for the potential bonus qualification bonus points. This week you might only want to get rid of one of them. And it's a coin flip as to which one. They both have advanced to the final round, I think, 22 times now. So they both are the best in qualification. But Keselowski probably will do a little bit better in race trim, so you might want to drop out Logano. Drop down to Group C, and this Danica Patrick is your best dark horse because of the 2 runs that she had, the 2 career best finishes she had on similarly configured tracks. She finished 7th at Kansas and 6th was at Atlanta a couple of weeks back. Where are you, Danica? Yeah, 6th at Atlanta. So she could get in that top 10 again, and if she doesn't, if she finishes outside the top 10, probably close enough that she makes a good allocation management play up against both Dillon and Larson. Larson's going to finish best still. Larson's going to run the table, I believe, except for potentially Talladega. He's going to be the best finishing Group C, the best finishing rookie in every race for the rest of this year. But you have to decide when the other guys are going to get close enough to him. Dillon has been consistent. He's shown more consistency than Danica, so if that's what's important to you, he gets the activation. If raw power is more important to you, Dillon doesn't have any top 10s. Danica has 2, so she could be the driver that gets the activation. But in that case, you'd want Dillon and Patrick both on your provisional roster so you can make it a race day decision and go with whichever one of them has the best 10-lap average in happy hour.
All right. Well, we're down to the point where we got to pick a winner. This is where Dan's jinx comes in, so keep this in mind when you're all making your picks this week. I'm going to go first this week. I like Kyle Larson to finally get his first win this week at Kansas and totally screw up this whole Chase thing. So I think he's going to win at Kansas. Then Casey, I'm going to make my pick for next week right now. Casey Kane's going to win at Charlotte. So that makes none of the favorites exempt from the Talladega disaster. So that's just the way I hope it plays out. So who you got, Steve?
Well, you messed me up. So I'm going to throw even a bigger monkey wrench into this thing, and I'm going to say Kyle Larson's teammate is going to pull up the huge upset, and Jamie McMurray is going to victory lane.
Dan, who you like?
Oh, who to jinx? It's Kansas. I'm going with Casey Kane. I think he's rejuvenated by making the cut, and the next 2 tracks are he's as good there as any of the drivers in the playoffs. So,
Beth, who you got? Who's your pick?
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Steve and go with Jamie McMurray.
Wow, man, we are just all over this.
Wow. Beth Ann, what are you thinking?
You guys have had the same pick several times in the last 6 months or so. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I got one other. Who knows? Anyway, that's it for this week. So we'll.
Oh wait, did it pay off last week? We all picked top 10 drivers, by the way. Charlie, you and I had Johnson. Steve had Boyer, and Beth had Larson. So we all had top 10s.
Yeah, we didn't do too bad last week, but nobody picked Jeffy. I really thought Steve was going to go with Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's.
Hey, hold on. You want to get this over with? I got one other thing, real quick. Sorry.
All right, yeah, that's okay. We can stay here for as long as you want.
That's okay. I got a question. Is Michael Waltrip doing NASCAR a disservice or a service by hanging around on Dancing with the Stars?
Well, I'll leave that to somebody else first.
You know, if my daughters were on Dancing with the Stars, I might watch it, and with the emphasis on the word might. So. I didn't watch. It's funny to watch all the media sitting there on Twitter and watching this and trying to comment on it because they obviously have no idea what's going on. But So it's got a few extra fans, I would think.
I must say that NASCAR is extremely well heeled in its social media if they're able to keep that slug on that show, because he is by far the worst of anyone that has gotten kicked off, and he sticks around. So NASCAR's got some oomph.
Yeah, well, they do have a little bit of sponsorship that they're playing with there. So yeah, I think there might be a little influence. I don't know. It does nothing for me. I think he's just for the guy who won a couple of real important Daytona 500s. He's just cheapened his image in my mind. But that's just me.
Okay.
Beth, what do you think?
I think it just underscores my theory about Michael Waltrip, and I won't discuss that any further on here.
He does, Beth Ann, all I will say is he does nothing to dissuade that theory. Trust me.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm up to speed.
Okay. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And okay, so that's it for this week. We may have a special guest next week on our show. We're trying to make an arrangement to get a longtime On Pit Row contributor on here to talk about his new book. So maybe we'll be able to pull that off. We'll see how that goes out throughout the week. Keep an eye on the Facebook page for news regarding that. I am Charlie Turner, joined by my friends Steve Ronkowitz in Sylvania, Ohio. Steve-O. Dan Beaver down in Texas. Beth Ann down in Bowling Green, Ohio. And we'll be back next week to talk about Kansas and preview the big race at Charlotte. So thanks for joining us this week for our live NASCAR Hangout on Pit Row.
You've just been on Pit Row, and now you're up to speed with the best information about the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
Hey, this is Jeff Hamm from NASCAR on Fox and Speed, and all the cool people hang on Pit Row.
This is On Pit Row. On Pit Row.